Okay, good morning, brothers and sisters. We thank the Lord for once again another opportunity He has given us. And we shall be picking up from where we ended yesterday. So yesterday, we're looking at the return of the angel of Revelation 18. And when was he to return? So we saw that in 1888, this angel descended, but he was unable to accomplish his work. The work of blotting out sin, the work of bringing the latter rain to God's people, the last generation. So we saw that work was resisted seriously. So he was to return back. And we saw yesterday that in his returning back, he was to repeat the first, second, and the third angel's messages. So we are asking ourselves the question, why? The reason is, when this angel was resisted, the church was led into deep spiritual darkness. So this angel could not just come and begin by giving the loud cry of the third angel. But he has a work now of again removing people from spiritual darkness. So we saw as the lasting gospel, God begins by promising his people to cleanse them from all sin. So this angel was to begin that work, with that work. But that work we know is done by the first angel and the second angel. We know the third angel, his purpose is to fulfill the promise. So this angel was to come back, but he was to repeat all the three messages. And then later, this angel was to accomplish his work with a loud cry. So we asked ourselves the question, when was he to come back? So we had to go and ask ourselves the question, when does the first angel come into history? The first angel. So we had to go back to the Millerite history, which is now going to be a type to this last generation. So we saw in Millerite history that the first angel arrived at the time of the end, at the unsealing of the book of Daniel. So we had to go and look at the events connected with the time of the end, to see whether we had really a full time of the end. So when we went to Daniel 11 verse 40, we saw that Daniel 11:40 had two parts. And all these two parts were supposed to be fulfilled at the time of the end. So the first part, the king of the south was to push at the king of the north. And then the king of the north was to retaliate against the king of the south. So in our study, we really saw that part one was fulfilled. The king of the south came and pushed at the king of the north. We saw that in 1798, king of the south was France. Really, he came 1798 and took the Papa as a captive, who was the king of the north. buwambe nga yali kabaka w'omwambuka.
However, we looked for the second battle.
Naye twagenze maaso ne tunoonya olutalo olwokubiri.
The king of the north retaliating.
Kabaka ow'omwambuka ng'akomawo okulwanagana.
We did not see this battle coming to its fulfillment.
Olutalo tetwalulabeko nga lutuukirizibwa.
So according to William Miller's rules,
okusinziira ku mateeka ga William Miller,
we could not mark a 1798 as a full time of the end.
Tetusobola kulamba 1798 nga ekiseera eky'enkomerero ekijjudde.
So we had to wait for its future development.
Twali tulina okulinda okutuukirira kwakyo okwali kugenda okuba mu maaso.
And that is at the fulfillment of the second event or the second part.
Ng'okwe kutuukirira ku kyokulabirako oba ku lutalo olwokubiri olw'essuula ekitundu ekyokubiri.
Where the king of the north
kabaka ow'omwambuka
comes now against the king of the south,
wajja kati n'alumba kabaka ow'omaserengeta,
who is made up of countries or territories.
Oyo kati ng'ayina ensi oba amatwale.
So we saw in our history
twalabye mu byafaayo byaffe
that the France in 1798,
nti Bufalansa mu 1798
that really it was the king of the south.
ddala yali kabaka w'omaserengeta.
But we saw that he lost this title in 1799.
Naye twalabye nti ekitiibwa kino yakifiirwa mu 1799
at the end of the French Revolution.
Nga enkyukakyuka ey'Obufalansa ewedde.
However, we saw that this spirit of the king of the south, it kept on growing in other countries. And we saw that it was fully manifested in 1917 in Russia. In 1917. And we saw that by 1926 that this spirit had even come up with territories under the Soviet Union. So that this spirit then became a threat to the papacy. Because this spirit, Soviet Union had taken most of the countries that were governed by the Catholic Church. So we saw that as it was in the first, that the papacy looked for a great power that was existing by then, as it looked for France in the past, and they planned the means of how to bring down this power. So we saw that the papacy united with United States of America, and when we came to 1989, 9th November, we saw that these two powers, through the Cold War, this king of the south was scattered. And this event marked the fulfillment of Daniel 11 verse 40.
Era ekyafaayo kino ekindi kiba nga kinyweza okutuukirira kwa Danyeri 11:4.
So marking 1989
olwo nga tulambika 1989
as a full time of the end,
nga ekiseera eky'enkomerero ekijjudde,
marking the arrival of the first angel's message,
olwo nga nakyo kiramba okujja kwa malayika asooka,
and marking the return of the angel of Revelation 18.
Era bwekyo nekiramba okudda kwa malayika owakulikira 18.
So we said from 1989 it's going to imply that we are going to repeat all the history of our grandparents. So we saw in our past presentations that our parents, they had also the time of the end. They had the first and the second angel's messages, which brought them to the time of the cleansing. There's first temple cleansing on their side, but also a second cleansing when we come to the line of Adam. So we saw that 1844
twalabye nti mu 1849
we saw that it was Passover.
twalabye nti kwali kuyitako
And ahead of them,
mu maaso gaabwe
they were supposed to have Pentecost.
baali balina okufa ne Pentecost
And that was 1849.
era kyali mu 1849
They were supposed to have a shaking
baali balina okubeera n'okunyenyeza
and then the loud cry.
n'oluyogano lwabo.
So this history,
Ebyafaayo bino
it was a fulfillment
byali kutuukirizibwa
of the last everlasting gospel.
ebyenjiri esembayo ey'emirembe n'emirembe.
But because it never had a full time of the end,
Era okuba nti teyalina kiseera kya nkomerero ekijjudde,
it was also not complete. This line wasn't perfect.
ebyafaayo bino nabyo tebyatuukirira tebyatuukirira.
So implying that this line
Kitegeeza nti ebyafaayo bino
now was going to be a type or a mirror
byali bigenda kubeera kati ekyokulabirako
of the journey
eky'olugendo
that now we are to walk as the last generation from 1989.
kakati ffe tulina okutambula nga omulembe ogusembayo okuviira ddala mu 1989.
So implying from 1989,
Kitegeeza nti okuva mu 1989
we are going to have the first angel,
tugenda kuba ne malayika asooka,
we are going to have the second
tugenda
angel,
kuba ne malayika owokubiri,
and they are all going to be pointing us to Passover,
ate bonna bagenda kuba batunuuliza ku kuyitako
where we shall have our first temple cleansing.
egy'okubeera n'okulongoosa kwa yeekaalu
Then
kusooka.
at the end of the day, we shall have Pentecost,
Oluvannyuma lwa byonna tujja kuba ne Pentecost,
we shall have the blowing of trumpets,
tujja kuba n'okufuuka
which
kw'amakondeere
is the shaking,
nga kwe kunyeenyezebwa,
we shall have the loud cry,
tujja kubeera n'oluyogano lwa ggulu
which is the day of atonement,
nga lunaku olw'okutangirira,
and then the close of probation.
tube n'ekiseera eky'okugalawo ekiseera ekyekisa.
So today we want to go and dig deep
Olwaliro twagala kugenda tusime mu buziba
on the experience
mu bumanyirivu
that we must get as we are going through this journey.
bwe tufuna nga tuyita mu byafaayo bino mu lugendo luno.
And we also want to know
Era twagala okumanya
how far are we with this journey,
nti tutuuseewa mu lugendo luno.
because the year 1989
Kubanga omwaka 1989
is now actually like a 30 something years from then.
mpaka kati tuli mu myaka nga 3 okuva mu kiseera ekyo.
So we need to know how far have we gone in those 35 years.
Tulina okwebuuza nti tugenze kyenkanawa mu myaka egyo egya 35.
Yeah. Now there is one thing that I want us to first understand,
Waliwo ekintu kye njagala tusooke tutegeere
that there are two desolate powers
nti waliwo amaanyi agalinyirira abiri
that we are going to with while in this journey.
ge tugenda okusisinkana nga tuli mu lugendo luno.
So what are these two desolating powers
Maanyi ki gano abiri ge tulina
that we are going to meet and we must overcome
ge tugenda okusisinkana era ge tugenda okuwangula
as we are going through this journey?
nga tuyita mu lugendo luno.
So in order to understand these two desolating powers,
Okusobola okutegeera obulungi amaanyi gano abiri agalinyirira,
we need to just go back to the big line of Adam
tulina okuddayo bulungi nnyo ku layini oba byafaayo binene bya Adamu.
and look at those two desolating powers
Tutunuulira amaanyi gano abiri agalinyirira
that were to trodden down the people of God
agaali ag'okulinnyirira abantu ba Katonda
and then have the sanctuary cleansed.
olwo yeekaalu erongosebwe.
So when we go to Daniel 8:13,
Bwe tugenda mu Danyeri 8:13
so there is a question
waliwo ekibuuzo
that is related to what we are saying right now.
ekikwatagana n'ebyo twali tuyiga kakati.
So we know when we go to the book of Daniel,
Tukimanyi tugenda mu kitabo kya Danyeri
chapter 2, 7 and 8,
chapter eyokubiri ey'omusanvu n'ey'omunaana.
all these powers are showing us the powers that rise out of the earth
Ebitabo ebyawandiikibwa byonna byonna bimutulaga ku maanyi agasituka okuva mu nsi
that tremble down the people of God
agalinyirira abantu ba Katonda
until when we come to the day of the atonement
paka bwe tutuuka ku lunaku olw'okutandika,
or to the day of judgment
ku lunaku olw'omusango,
and have the people of God cleansed
abantu ba Katonda ne babeera nga balongose
or saved from these powers.
oba ne baba nga banunulibwa okuva mu maanyi gano.
So in chapter 8,
Mu chapter ey'omunaana
we know when we come to it,
tukimanyi nti bwe tutuuka ku yo
the Bible begins by revealing
Bayibuli etandika ng'ebikkula
a beast that is represented as a lamb with two horns.
ensolo eragibwanga endiga ng'erina amayembe abiri.
Then the next is the he-goat.
Eddako nga y'embuzi.
Then the third
Eyokusatu
is this dragon
eyokusatu nga gwe gusota ogwo
that is represented with is it a dragon, a terrible beast.
eyokusatu nga y'ensolo y'entiisa,
which is having 10 horns.
erina amayembe 10.
But below it,
Wansi waayo naye
then there is another beast,
waliyo ensolo endala,
but almost 10, the same beast,
naye nga kyenkana y'ensolo y'emu,
but now there is another power that came on it.
naye kakati erinako amaanyi amalala agagijjako.
So all those powers,
Amaanyi ago gonna
we are shown that they trodden down the people of God.
twali tulagibwa nti gaali galinyirira abantu ba Katonda.
So when we come to Daniel 8:13,
Tugenda mu Danyeri 8:13,
the question is asked
ekibuuzo kibuuzibwa
that for how long were these powers
nti kumala bbanga kigana amaanyi abiri
were to tread down the people of God and the sanctuary,
gajja okumala nga galinyirira abantu ba Katonda ne yeekaalu,
and then to have the sanctuary cleansed.
olwo yeekaalu erongosebwa.
So this is what it says.
Bwe kiti bwe kigamba.
Then I heard one saint
Olwo ne mpulira omutukuvu omu
speaking to another saint,
ng'ayogera n'omutukuvu omulala,
said unto that certain saint which spake,
era oyo omutukuvu omu n'ayogera n'oyo omutukuvu yali ayogera,
how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice
nti kinaatwala bbanga ki okwolesebwa kuno okukwatagana ku kiweebwayo ekya buli lunaku,
and the transgression of desolation,
era n'ekyomuze ekizikiriza,
to give both the sanctuary
okuwaayo byombi yeekaalu
and the host to be trodden underfoot.
n'eggye okulinnyibwa wansi w'ebigere.
So when we come to this chapter,
Bwe tujja mu ssula eyo,
actually when we come to this verse 13,
bwe tujja mu lunyiriri luno olw'okumi
we all know that the word sacrifice
tukimanyi nti ekigambo saddaaka
was just added by human wisdom.
byagattibwa bugattibwa amagezi g'abantu.
So we are going to remove it and read it as it is.
Kati tugenda kijjawo tusome nga bwe kiri.
So the question is,
Ekibuuzo kiri nti
for how long
okumala bbanga ki
was the daily
ekya buli lunaku
and the transgression of desolation
n'ekyomuzizo ekizikiriza
so two powers
amaanyi abiri
to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot.
nti okuwaayo yeekaalu n'eggye okubeera nga birinyibwa wansi w'ebigere.
So for how long were these two powers?
Kakati amaanyi gano gaali gakumala bbanga ki
We are going to tread down the people of God and the
gaali
sanctuary.
gagenda okulinyirira abantu ba Katonda ne yeekaalu.
So the answer comes in,
Ekyokuddibwamu kijja ne kigamba nti,
and he said unto me,
n'aŋŋamba nti
unto 2,300 days,
nti ng'ayise ennaku 23
then the sanctuary shall be cleansed.
awatukuvu bajja kulongosebwa.
So in simple terms,
Olwo mu ngeri ennyangu
the question is saying,
ekibuuzo kiri mu gamba
for how long
nti okumala bbanga ki
will these two powers
amaanyi gano abiri
tread down the sanctuary and the people of God,
we gajja okulinyirira yeekaalu n'abantu ba Katonda,
and then have the sanctuary cleansed?
olwo ne tulyoka tuba n'okulongosa kwa yeekaalu.
And the answer comes in,
Era ekyokuddibwamu ne kijja
on 2,300 days,
nti nga wayise ennaku 23
then the sanctuary shall be cleansed.
olwo watukuvu wanaalongosebwa.
So in these verses,
Mu nnyiriri zino eno
what we are saying
ki kye tulaba
that we have two powers
waliwo amaanyi abiri
that desolate God's people,
agalinyirira abantu ba Katonda,
and that is the daily
nga kye kya buli lunaku
and the transgression of desolation.
n'ekyomuzizo ekizikiriza.
So that is on the big line,
Ekyo kiri ku byafaayo ebinene ebigazi,
or we can say on Adam's line.
oba mu byafaayo ebya Adamu.
Remember we said you have the natural line,
Twagambye nti waliwo ebyafaayo eby'omubiri,
and then you have the spiritual line.
waliwo ebyafaayo eby'omwoyo,
But the natural line has to tell us the spiritual line.
naye ebyafaayo eby'omwoyo byomubiri bino tulaga ebyafaayo eby'omwoyo.
So if we had two powers
Tuba nga twalina amaanyi abiri
that were desolating God's people on the natural line,
agali galinyira abantu ba Mukama ku layini ey'omubiri,
so it implies when we come to the spiritual,
kitegeeza nti tujja mu by'omwoyo
we have to still have those two powers treading down God's people.
tugenda kuba n'amaanyi ge gamu abiri nga galinyirira abantu.
So we have the data and then the transgression of desolation.
Ekya buli lunaku n'ekyomuzizo ekizikiriza.
But still we can see this in the life of the children of Israel,
Naye ne kati tusobola kiraba nate mu bulamu bw'abaana ba Isirayiri
that really there are two powers that have always been desolating God's people.
nti waddewo ddala amaanyi abiri agabadde galinyirira nga abantu ba Mukama.
So we know that ancient Israel went through two captivities.
Tukimanyi nti Isirayiri ey'omubiri yagenda mu buwambe bwa mirundi ebiri.
So what was the first captivity? So the first captivity was the captivity of Egypt.
Nti obuwambe obwasooka bwali buwambe obw'e Misiri.
And what was the other second captivity?
Era obuwambe obwokubiri bwali bwaki?
So it was Babylon.
Obuwambe obw'e Babuloni.
So still we are seeing two powers that desolated God's people. So God had to come and deliver them from Egypt, and he was also to come and deliver them from Babylon. But this was pointing to the two powers that were to tread in God's people at the end of the world. As we shall see. Now we need to go ahead and look at these two powers. So we say that this deity, so it's called a deity because this is the power that had existed for a longer period of time. So when we come to this chart, we have these four kingdoms. But we look at the first kingdom, it is Babylon. The second, Medo-Persia. We have Greece. And then the last one is called pagan Rome. So, if you look at Babylon, it was pagan nature. Medo-Persia, it's paganism. Greece, paganism. When we come to pagan Rome, here now we have full paganism. So because it was a power that was always there daily, so the Bible is identifying it as the deity. So in simple terms, this day is paganism. But if we go to Revelation 12, we have a dragon, and that dragon is represented as having 10 heads. 10 is it 7 heads? With 7 horns. So that beast is also represented as the dragon. But if we go to Spirit of Prophecy, it's telling us this dragon is in a primary sense representing Satan, but in the secondary sense it's paganism. So in simple terms, when you come to this deity, which is paganism, which another name can we attach to it? Dragon. So we have the dragon, power predominating God's people. And then we have another power, which is called the transgression of desolation. And we know this power was to come after paganism. And we all know that the power that came after paganism or after pagan Rome, which power was that? So it was the papacy. So implying that this transgression of desolation is the papacy. And you all know that when you come to Revelation 13, that whatever the papacy has, he got them from who? From the dragon or from the deity or from the paganism. So in simple terms we can say that these two powers that are always desolating God's people is the dragon and then the papacy. But we know the papacy is who? Is spiritual who? Spiritual Babylon. So that is what we saw is spiritual Babylon. So we can see very well that when we go back to the natural, that Babylon did a great work in desolating God's people. All together. But we have also the dragon here. Is paganism, and and is also the deity. So implying that this paganism is equivalent to Egypt. So we need to ask ourselves the question whether Egypt in the Bible is also called a dragon. So when we go to Ezekiel 29,
tugenda mu Ezekiel 29
verse 2 verse 3, the Bible there is identifying King Pharaoh,
Pharaoh,
king of Egypt, and is identifying him as the dragon. So we have two powers that always desolate God's people. So we have the dragon and we have the papacy, which we can also call the deity and transgression of desolation. But in the natural, we have who? We have Egypt and we have Babylon. Now if we look at these two powers physically with our physical eyes, there is something that we can identify with these two powers. So if we look at these four powers here, they were persecuting God's people, and they were desolating God's people, but outside the church. So these powers could come from outside. They had their own seats outside. Then they could come and begin desolating God's power, God's people. So that was the case with the deity. Always paganism. But what can we see with the papacy? Which thing can we see that is connected with the papacy? Is it a power that persecutes outside and it is outside God's people? So this one comes and sits in the church and it begins to persecute or to desolate God's people. So we can see this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 1 to verse 7. The Bible talking about the papacy. It says, now we beseech you, brethren, okay, it says 2 Thessalonians 2 1 to 7. It says, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, that by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not shaken in the mind, or be troubled, neither by speed nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that day of Christ is at hand. He says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. He says, who opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God is seated in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So when we come to this man of sin, the Bible is telling us that this guy exalts himself and he opposes that is worshipped, and he sits in the temple of God and he calls himself God. So this papacy
Papa ono
is not like the daily.
si tali nga kino ekya buli lunaku.
So Papa say comes
Papa wajja
and he sits in the very temple of God.
ajja n'atulira ddala mu yeekaalu ya Mukama yennyini.
And he calls himself God.
Era bw'atyo ne yeeyita Katonda.
So this is a power
Gano maanyi
that comes and sits inside,
agajja ne gatuula munda
and it represents itself,
era ne geeraga go nga go
and it exalts itself above everything that is worshipped.
era ne geegulumiza go eri buli kintu kyonna kyonna ekisinzibwa.
But what I want us to know,
Naye kye njagala tumanye
that these are just two powers,
si gano maanyi abiri gokka
but they are representing
naye galaga
the two powers
amaanyi abiri
that are working in our lives
agali mu kukola mu bulamu bwaffe
that need to be overcome.
agalina okuwangulwa.
But if you look at these two powers,
naye bw'otunuulira amaanyi gano abiri
actually it is one power.
kyamazima amaanyi gali gamu
As the brother was teaching us yesterday.
nga oluganda yadde atusomesa ejjo.
So there is just a transition
Waliwo enkyukakyuka bukyukakyuka
from one position of doing its work
okuva ku mulimu mu ngeri emu gye kikoleramu emirimu gyakyo
to another position,
eri mu ngeri endala
but it is still the same power
naye ng'amaanyi ge gamu
and doing the same activity.
era nga gakola emirimu gye gimu.
So the daily,
ekya buli lunaku
it is working from outside,
kikolera wabweru,
but when you come to the translation of
naye
desolation,
bwe tujja eri ekyomuze ekizikiriza
this it sits inside
kino kyo kituula munda
and it works inside,
era kikolera munda
but it is just the same power.
naye nga maanyi ge gamu.
So according to the principles that we've been laying,
okusinziira ku mateeka ge tubadde tuteeka wansi
we have always been saying
tubadde tugambanga
we have the natural
tulina ekyomubiri
and then you have the spiritual.
ate ne tuba n'ekyomwoyo.
So what does this imply?
kino kitegeeza ki?
That the daily
nti ekyomubiri
or paganism,
ekya buli lunaku oba obukafiiri
it is a natural power
ge maanyi ag'omubiri
desolating God's people,
agalinyirira abantu ba Mukama
but pointing to the spiritual power
naye nga galaga amaanyi ag'omwoyo
that desolates God's people.
agalinyirira abantu ba Mukama.
It is also when you also come to Egypt and Babylon.
Tujja ne Misiri ne Babuloni.
Egypt is the natural power
Misiri ge maanyi ag'omubiri
that desolates God's people,
agalinyirira abantu ba Mukama
but pointing to Babylon,
naye nga gasongera ku Babuloni
which is a spiritual power
nga ge maanyi ag'omwoyo
that desolates God's people.
agalinyirira abantu ba Mukama.
Are we all together?
Tuli ffenna wamu.
But what I want you to see,
Ekyo njagala mulabe
these powers are all existing,
amaanyi gano buli kaseera gabeerawo,
but only that
naye
one first manifests itself
agamu agasooka ge gajja ne geeraga
and then the other comes later.
amalala ne galyoka gajja oluvannyuma.
But what I want you to see,
Ekyo njagala mulabe
the second does not come
ekyokubiri tekijja
until the first has done its work and it's out of the way.
paka ng'ekisooka kimaze okukola omulimu gwakyo era ne kiva ne mu kkubo.
But all the two powers are there
Naye
initially.
amaanyi ago gombi abiri gabeerawo mu ntandikwa.
So it goes ahead and says,
agenda maaso n'agamba
and now ye know what withholdeth that it might be revealed in its time.
era kakati mumanyi ekirobera ki alyoka abikulwe mu kiseera kye.
So there is a power
kakati waliwo amaanyi
that is withholding this purpose
aganywezezza obwapapa buno
from being revealed.
okulemesebwa okulabisibwa.
So when we go to verse 7,
bwe tugenda mu lunyiriro
he
lw'omusanvu
says, for the ministry of iniquity doeth already work.
kubanga naye kaakano ekyama eky'obujeemu weekiri kikola wabula kyokka aziyiza kaakano okutuusa lwaligibwawo.
So Paul is saying, this man of iniquity
omusajja ono ow'ekibi
is already at work.
waali era akola.
However,
naye
there is something that is preventing him from being revealed,
waliwo ekiri mu kumulemesa okubeera ng'alabisibwa
and it needs to be taken out of the way.
era kirina okuba nga kiggibwa mu kkubo.
And when it shall be taken out of the way,
bwe kinaaba nga kimaze okuggibwa mu kkubo,
what's going to happen? This man of sin is going to be
kigenda
revealed.
okubeerawo omwana ow'ekibi ono agenda kulabisibwa.
So these two powers are always in place,
amaanyi gano abiri buli kaseera gabeerawo nga gakola,
and we are saying it is almost the same power.
era nga tugambye kyeka n'amaanyi ge gamu.
But the first comes on stage,
naye asooka ajja n'alabisibwa,
and it is showing how it's going to do its work at the end of the world.
era nga kiri mu kulaga butya omulimu guno gugenda okukolebwa ku nkomerero y'ensi.
So the Bible goes ahead and says,
bayibuli egenda maaso n'egamba
for the mystery of iniquity doeth already work,
ekyama ky'obujeemu kikola omulimu gwakyo.
Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way.
Kujjako oyo yekka akkiriza ajja kukkiriza paka wanaggyibwawo n'aggyibwa mu kkubo.
And then shall the wicked be revealed,
olwo omubi anaalabisibwa,
whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth,
Mukama gw'ajja okusaanyaawo n'omwoyo ogw'omukamwa ke,
and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming.
era gw'ajja okusaanyaawo n'okumasamasa kw'okujja kwe.
Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan,
Era n'oyo ng'okujja ku kuli mabega wa Sitaani,
with all power and signs and lying wonders.
okukola kwa Sitaani n'amaanyi gonna n'obulimba weewunyisa.
So when we come to this line,
Tujja ku layini eno
we have two powers that we are going to meet,
tulinawo amaanyi abiri ge tugenda okusinkana,
and these two powers we are to overcome them if we are to be saved.
era amaanyi gano tulina okugawangula singa tubalwa kulokole.
So we have to meet Egypt,
Tulina okusinkana Misiri,
and we have to overcome it.
tulina okugiwangula.
We must meet Babylon,
Tulina okusinkana Babulooni,
and Babylon we must also overcome
naye
him.
ne Babulooni naye tulina okugiwangula.
But there is that which is spiritual,
Naye waliwo ekyo nga kya mwoyo,
and there is that which is natural.
waliwo ekyo nga kya mubiri.
So Egypt is going to be natural,
Misiri egenda kubeera kya mubiri,
and Babylon is going to be spiritual.
Babulooni egenda kubeera kya mwoyo.
So if it is natural,
Bwebanga ya mubiri,
we are also going to meet it in a natural sense.
tugenda kumusinkana nakyo, tugenda kisinkana nakyo mu ngeri ey'omubiri.
Then Babylon, if it is spiritual,
Olwo Babulooni bwe kiba nga kya mwoyo,
we are going to meet it spiritually.
tugenda kukisisinkana nga kya mwoyo.
So that implies
Kitegeeza
we are going to first have deliverance
tugenda kusooka tufune okununulibwa
from that which is natural,
okuva mu ekyo eky'omubiri,
and then we shall have deliverance
olwo tulyoke tufune okununulibwa
from that which is spiritual.
okuva mu ekyo eky'omwoyo.
So as we are looking at these two powers,
Nga tutunulira amaanyi gano abiri,
what we should have in our minds,
kye tulina okuba mu ndowooza zaffe,
that these two powers
nti amaanyi gano abiri
are representing
gali mu kulaga
a power.
amaanyi.
Remember, we are saying this is a single power.
Tuli mu kugamba nti gano maanyi ge
It's
gamu,
the same power.
maanyi ge gamu.
So it is representing
Kiri mu kulaga nti
the power that is working in our lives,
amaanyi agali mu kukola mu bulamu,
that is making us slaves to sin.
agali mu kutuletera okubeera nga tuli bawambe ery'ekibi.
All together.
Tuli ffenna.
And what is that power?
Era nga maanyi ki gano?
Which power is that?
Maanyi kyago.
We are saying these two powers,
Tuli mu kugamba nti
they are representing
gali mu kulaga
a power that is working in our lives,
amaanyi agali mu kukola mu bulamu bwaffe,
and it's making us slaves to sin.
era nga gali mu kutuletera okubeera nga tuli bawambe ery'ekibi.
So what is that power that is making us slaves to sin? The carnal mind.
Nti endowooza ey'omubiri.
Remember, we went to, was it Jeremiah 7?
Twagenze mu Yeremiya 7.
Jeremiah 17:9.
Yeremiya 17:9.
What is so wicked? What is so desperately wicked?
Kiki ekyo ekisingayo okuba ekibi?
It is the heart.
Gwe mutima.
But if you look at these things,
Naye bw'otunuulira bakabaka bano ababiri,
more especially the papacy
naddala owa Paapa
and Babylon,
ne Babulooni,
these two guys are called wicked.
bano ababiri bayita ababi.
The most wicked people
Abantu ababi abakyasinze
that are represented in the Bible,
abalagibwa mu Bayibuli,
with some kings that are brought to view in the Bible.
ne bakabaka abalala abaleetebwa abamanyisibwa Bayibuli.
So if these two powers are so wicked,
Amaanyi gano bwe gaba nga mabi nnyo,
they are representing
galaga
the wicked thing that is within us,
ekyo ekibi ekiri mu ffe,
and that is the carnal mind
endowooza y'omubiri,
that is making us slaves to sin.
eri mu kuba nga etuleetera okubeera nga tuli bawambe ery'ekibi.
And that power,
Era amaanyi ago
we must overcome it
tulina okugawangula
in its two phases.
mu ngeri zaago ebbiri.
Okay. So if there are two powers,
Waba nga waliwo amaanyi abiri,
so let me say this is Egypt,
bwebanga Misiri,
and then we have Babylon,
ngano ye Babulooni,
and we are saying one is natural
nga tuli mugamba nti ekimu kya mubiri,
and the other one is spiritual.
ekirala kya mwoyo.
We are going to see that we must come and overcome Egypt.
Tugenda kulaba nti tulina okujja tuwangula Misiri.
But how are we going to overcome Egypt?
Naye tugenda kuwangula tutya Misiri?
It's going to be through the plan of salvation.
Kigenda kuba nga enteekateeka y'obulokozi bw'eri.
So according to the plan of salvation,
sinziira ku nteekateeka y'obulokozi,
so God is going to begin
Mukama agenda tandika
by promising us
ng'atusuubiza
that He's going to deliver us from Egypt.
kyagenda kufunira okuva e Misiri.
But who comes with a message of hope?
Naye ani ajja ne bubaka obw'essuubi?
It's the first angel.
Ye malayika
So
asooka.
during this period,
Okuyita mu kiseera kino
it implies that we shall need the first angel's message.
tugenda kubeera n'obwetaavu bwa malayika asooka.
What else?
Kyekirala
We shall need the second angel's message
tugenda kwetaaga n'obubaka bwa malayika owokubiri
that comes and expands what the Lord wants to do for us.
ebijja n'atulambululira Mukama kyagala otukolera.
But after the second angel's message,
Naye oluvannyuma lwa malayika owokubiri
what shall we need?
ki kye tujja okwetaaga?
We shall need the third angel's message.
Tugenda kwetaaga malayika owokusatu.
And what does the third angel's message do?
Malayika owokusatu akola ki?
For him, he accomplishes God's promises.
Atuukiriza ebisuubizo bya Mukama.
So we must have the third angel
Tulina okuba ne malayika owokusatu
to deliver us from Egypt.
okutunula okuva e Misiri.
Are we all together?
Tuli wamu.
But after we are done with Egypt,
Naye tuba nga tumaze e Misiri,
what is ahead of us?
ki ekiri mu maaso gaffe?
There is Babylon.
Waliyo owa Babulooni.
Remember, as this one is taken away,
Jjukira ng'onagibwawo,
another power is revealed
amalala gabikkulwa
that is working within.
agali mu kukola mu ffe.
But remember, we are saying it's the same power.
Naye twagambye nti gano maanyi ge gamu.
It is just changing its seat.
Gali mu kukyusa bukyusa ntebe yaago.
So if the carnal mind
Bwebanga endowooza ey'omubiri
has been manifested from outside,
ebadde eragibbwa ewabweru,
what's going to happen when you come to this state?
ki ekigenda okutuuka ku ddaala lino?
It's going to be manifested within.
Kigenda kubeera nga kirabisibwa munda.
So it is working now from within.
Kaakati kiri mu kukolera munda.
So here it was working,
Wano kyali kyadde kiri mu kukola,
but it could not be revealed that it is
naye
within.
nga tekisobola kubikkulirwa kumanyisibwa nti kiri munda.
But once the natural is taken out of the way,
Ekyombiro kiba nga kimaze okuggibwawo.
now what is inside is going to be much reflected.
Naye kaakati ekyo ekiri munda kigenda kuba nga kibikkulibwa.
And once it comes on stage,
Era bwe kijja ne kirabisibwa,
what's God going to do?
Mukama agenda kukola ki?
What is he going to do?
Mukama agenda kukola ki?
What did he do here?
Ki kye yakoze wano eno?
He began by what?
Yatandise na
He
ki?
began by promising us.
Ng'atusuubiza.
So when we come here,
Tujja wano,
God is also going to promise us
Mukama agenda kujja naye atusuubize
that he will cleanse us from this power of sin.
nti agenda kutulongoosa okuva mu maanyi gano.
But which angel comes with the message?
Naye malayika akyajja n'obubaka obwo.
So we are going to also have the first angel.
Tugenda kubeera ne malayika asooka,
What else? We shall have the second angel.
tugenda kuba ne malayika owokubiri,
And what else?
tugenda kubeera naki?
We shall have the third angel.
Tugenda kubeera ne malayika owokusatu.
Can we all see that?
So kiraba
I want us to move together
tugatambulira wamu,
because at the end of the day we are going to combine something.
kubanga luvannyuma lwa byonna tugenda kuba nga tugatte.
There is the line here.
Waliwo layini wano,
Many people are asking themselves, where is it coming from?
abasinga beebuuza nti evaawa.
I want us to develop it together here.
Njagala tugitambuze ffenna wano eno.
So there is that which is natural
Waliwo ekyo eky'omubiri,
and there is that which is spiritual.
waliwo n'ekyo eky'omwoyo.
And we must overcome all the two.
Ate nga tulina okuwangula byonna.
But there is only one way
Naye waliwo engeri emu
in
yokka
which God delivers us from sin.
Mukama mwatulongooseza okuva mu kibi.
So we are going to have the three messages here.
Tugenda kubeera n'obubaka busatu wano,
Overcome Egypt,
okuwangula Misiri.
but we shall need again the three messages
Tujja kuddamu tutaaga obubaka
to
busatu,
overcome who?
okuwangula ani?
To overcome Babylon.
Okuwangula Babulooni.
But remember we said
Naye mujjukire twagambye
the gospel
nti enjiri
is revealed in how many ways?
eragibwa mu ngeri mmeka?
In 3 ways, isn't it?
Mu ngeri ssatu.
So we must see it in the visions.
Tulina okugiraba mu kwolesebwa,
We must see it also in the what?
tulina okugiraba ne mu ki?
In the figures.
Mu bifaananyi,
And what else?
mu ngeri ky'endala,
In the parables.
ne mu ngero.
So this is the gospel in what?
Eno yenjiri mu ki?
In the vision,
Mu kwolesebwa
as it was revealed to John the Revelator.
nga bwe yalagibwa eri Yokaana omubikkulirwa.
But now let us come to the figure.
Naye kakati tujje mu kifaananyi.
So we know in the figure,
Tumanyi nti mu bifaananyi
our plan of salvation begins with what?
enteekateeka y'obulokozi yaffe etandika na ki?
It begins with the slaughtering of the lamb.
Etandika
It begins with what? Thank you so much. So it's going to begin with Passover. And then until we come to the Day of Atonement. So implying we must have what? We must have Passover. Let me just write the days. We must have Passover on the 14th day of the first month. So what else? After Passover it's what? So we must have Pentecost on the 16th day of the third month. After Pentecost, what else? So we shall have the blowing of trumpets on the 7th day, on the first of the 7th month. After the blowing of trumpets, we must have the Day of Atonement on the 10th day of the 7th month. And that is when sin is overcome. Isn't it? So we must have the Day of Atonement for overcoming who? For overcoming Egypt. But remember, after overcoming Egypt, immediately Babylon appears. Are we all together? So we need also to overcome Babylon. But according to the figure, our journey is going to begin with what? So still we are going to have Passover. So the 14th day of the first month, which is the cross. Remember, this is a natural power. So which kind of Passover is this? So this one is going to be which kind of Passover? It's going to be, thank you so much for now getting the principles. So here we're going to have a natural what? A natural Passover altogether. What about now this one? So this one is going to be spiritual, to overcome a spiritual what? To overcome a spiritual power. So we shall also have Pentecost. We shall have the blowing of trumpets. And what else? We shall have the Day of Atonement on the 10th day of the 7th month. What is done on the 10th day of the 7th month? What do they do on the Day of Atonement? What does the high priest do? He cleanses the sanctuary. Are we together? And we have all seen that the cleansing of the sanctuary is connected with which angel? The third angel. So can you see the two temple cleansings that we've been talking about? So this one is going to be the first word. So first temple cleansing. So this one is going to be the what? The second temple cleansing. So the first temple cleansing is cleansing us from what? It's cleansing us from who? From Egypt. What about the second? It's cleansing us from Babylon. Can we all say that? But we also have the parable. Which parables do we know that demonstrate the plan of salvation? We have the parable of the 10 virgins. So implying we are going to have the parable of the 10 virgins here, which is Matthew 25. So we shall have the going forth of the virgins to meet the bridegroom. We shall have the telling of the bridegroom. We shall have midnight. And we shall have the coming of the bridegroom. Can we all see that? And this one is going to be a literal coming. Can we see it on the line, on the big line? So when did Jesus come literally as a bridegroom?
kabona nga anawasa omugole.
That one who ate at the cross.
Eddi asatu mu emu ku musalaba.
Then when did he come spiritually?
Era yajja ddi mu
On
kyomuliro
the door of atonement.
olunaku olw'okutangirira.
So these people made a mistake.
Bano abantu bakola ensobi.
They wanted him to come literally
Bali baagala gye mu buliwo
or naturally.
mu kyomubiri.
But this coming was supposed to be what?
Okujja kuno kwali
It was supposed to be spiritual.
kwali kwa kubeera kwa mwoyo.
Can you all see that?
So kira ffenna.
Now there is the issue
Naye waliwo ensonga kati
of the rain.
ey'enkuba.
Do we all know the rain?
Ffenna tumanyi enkuba.
And what it does in the plan of
Era
salvation.
n'ebyekola mu nteekateeka y'obulokozi.
So we have which rain and which rain?
Tulina nkuba ya kika kino.
So we have the former
Tulina enkuba esooka,
and we have what?
tulina enkuba ey'oluvannyuma.
And we have the latter rain. So what does the former do?
Enkuba esooka ekola ki?
So if we go to TM
Tugenda mu kitabo ekyo
506.1,
506 katonyezeemu.
it says, ask ye the Lord rain in the times of the latter rain.
Musabe Mukama enkuba mu kiseera ey'oluvannyuma.
So he goes ahead and says,
Agamba nti
so the Lord shall make a bright cloud
olwo Mukama n'abakolera ebire
and give them showers of rain.
era biwe enkuba.
He will cause to come down for you rain,
Ajja kubaletera okujja gye muli enkuba,
the rain and the latter rain.
enkuba esooka era n'enkuba
So he
esembayo.
goes ahead and says,
Agenda mu maaso n'agamba
in the east the former rain
mu buvanjuba enkuba
falls at the showing time.
enkuba esooka ejja mu kiseera eky'okusiga.
It is necessary
Kyetaagisa
in order that the seed may germinate.
nti ensigo esobole okuba ng'ekula.
So what does the former rain do?
Enkuba esooka ekola ki?
It is necessary
Yeetaagisa
for the seed to germinate.
okubeera ng'ensigo ekula.
So he goes ahead and says,
Agenda mu maaso n'agamba
under the influence of the fertilizing showers,
wansi w'enkuba eno egimusa,
the tender should spring up.
ebimera bino eno ebito bisituka.
The latter rain,
Enkuba esembayo
falling near the close of the season,
ejja nga sizoni eri mu kuggwaako,
ripens the grain
eyengeza emmere eno
and prepares it for sickle.
era n'egiteekerateekera okufungulwa.
So what does the latter rain do?
Enkuba esembayo lwekola ki?
And when does it fall?
Era ddi wejja?
They're telling us
Ali mutugamba
at the end of the season.
nga sizoni eri mu kuggwaako,
And its work
era omulimu gwayo
is to ripen the grain
kwe kwengeza emmere
and prepares it for sickle.
era n'egiteekateekera okufungulwa.
So he goes ahead and says,
Genda mu maaso n'agamba
the Lord employs these operations of nature
Mukama akozesa ebyokulabirako bino
to
eby'obutonde
represent the work of the Holy Spirit.
okulaga amaanyi ag'omwoyo mutukuvu.
As the dew and rain are given first to cause the seed to germinate
Ng'omusulo n'enkuba bisooka okuweebwa okuleetera ensigo okukula,
and then to ripen the harvest,
olwo n'okwengeza amakungula,
so the Holy Spirit is given to carry forward
bwekitabo kiri omwoyo mutukuvu aweebwa okutwala mu maaso
from one stage to another
ava ku mutendera gumu okutwala ku mulala,
the process of spiritual growth.
enteekateeka ey'okukula mu by'omwoyo.
So the rain in nature
Enkuba mu by'obutonde
represents the working of the Holy Spirit in our lives
eraga enkola y'omwoyo mutukuvu mu bulamu bwaffe
in order to enable us to overcome sin.
okusobola okutusobozesa okuwangula ekibi.
So we have talked about the latter rain,
Twogedde ku nsonga y'enkuba ey'oluvannyuma,
and the prophet is saying it ripens the grain.
era nabbi ali mutugamba nti eyengeza.
So what is this ripening,
Okwengera kuno kwe
and what does it represent?
era kulaga ki?
He says the ripening of the grain
Agamba okwengera okw'emmere eno
represents
kulaga
the completion.
okumaliriza.
I want you to hear.
Njagala muwulire.
What does the latter rain do?
Malayika
What does the latter rain do?
enkuba esembayo ekola ki?
It ripens the grain.
Eyengeza emmere.
But what does ripening represent?
Naye okwengeza kuno kulaga ki?
It represents the completion
Kulaga okutuukirira
of the work of grace in the soul.
okw'omulimu ogw'ekisa mu bulamu bwaffe.
So the former,
Esooka enkuba
what does it do?
ekola ki?
This it germinates.
Ekuza.
And what about the latter?
Era esembayo
It ripens,
eyengeza,
but ripening is completing.
naye ng'okwengeza kwe kubeera ng'emaliriza.
The work of grace in the heart.
Emaliriza omulimu ogw'ekisa mu mutima.
Are we together?
Tuli ffenna.
So we are going to come and bring it down here.
Tugenda kuba nga tukireeta wansi wano eno.
So when we come in the days of Egypt,
Tujja mu kiseera ekya Misiri.
what is that we need to overcome Egypt?
Kite tulina okuba nga twetaaga okuwangula Misiri.
depending on what we have just said, what we have been discussing. So we need what? We need just only former rain. We need both. All together. All together on that. So we are going to need the former rain and the latter rain. It's going to be the same case this side. We shall need the former rain and the latter rain. So we shall need the former rain in order to germinate against Egypt. And then we shall need the latter rain to have the work of grace completed in our lives. So when we come to Babylon, it's going to be the same word. So we are going to need the former rain, and we shall also need the latter rain. So I want you to mark the word latter. So we are told it comes at the end of the season. For it is just completing. Yeah, it is completing. So it must complete here in Egypt. It must also complete here in Babylon. Can you all see that? So as we need the third angel to complete here, we shall also need the latter rain to complete. So implying the third angel move hand in hand with what? With the latter rain. And that's what the prophet of the Lord says. I think you still remember the quotation we read, where the people were speaking the truth with a lot of power. And Sister White asked the angel what had caused this effect. What was the answer? It was the latter rain. It was the loud cry of the third angel. It's the refreshing. Can you all see that? So we have a journey against Egypt, and you have a journey against Babylon. But Egypt is the natural, and Babylon is the spiritual. So we first gain victory over that which is natural, and then we get victory over that which is spiritual. So this has been the principle that has been working throughout. When God promised Abraham to give him Canaan, what did he do? He first gave him that which is natural. And then later, Adam was to walk a journey in order to come and meet that which is spiritual. But he died before he received that which is spiritual. And what does the Bible say in Hebrews? He died before receiving what was promised. So what should that come into our minds? That God considers that which is spiritual. It is that which is spiritual which is more important. If you don't have that which is spiritual, it's like as if you don't have. But I want us to be careful that also the natural is important. We cannot get that which is spiritual unless we first obtain that which is natural. So we cannot come and overcome Babylon here unless we overcame Egypt. Altogether. So it is until that we will overcome the outer man, that is when we are going to overcome the inner man. So if we are in the history whereby we are to overcome the inner man, but when the outer man is still being seen in our lives, it implies that we are too late.
We have to first overcome that which is natural, and then later we obtain victory over that which is spiritual. Okay, now I want you to see that these are two lines, but God combines them and He makes one line. Are we all together? I want us to move together. If I see you when you're not with me, there is where I get discouraged. Because I know it is complicated now to bring things together. So they look like as if they are two lines. But at the end of the day, it is one line. Remember we said, this is one power, but it is changing seat. There is always a transition, but it's one power which God keeps on following until He overthrows it from our lives. So let us go and say, using this mode of the former latter rain, and see how God is combining and is making one line. So let us go to Joel chapter 2 verse 23. So are we all there? The Luganda version, they won't work for you here. Satan is not an easy man. He knows the very important verses in the Bible, and he has tampered with these verses. So Joel 2:23, this is what it says. He says, "Be glad then, ye children of Zion." Now as we're reading Joel, we should know where Joel is standing. This is a man who is standing before the cross. In simple terms, before the spiritual Passover. But this is a man who is already having the natural Passover. Where do we have the natural Passover standing in history? Yes. Apart from, don't look at that line of children of Israel going to Canaan. I want on the big line. Very good. The first Passover stood in Eden. Remember we said as God was giving a gospel, the gospel promise, what was on this side? It was an altar with a burnt offering, pointing to the spiritual Passover at the cross of Calvary. So Joel is standing after the natural Passover, and is aiming to come to the spiritual Passover. So he's saying, "Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God." So now it's going to tell us a reason as why these people should rejoice. For he has given you the former rain moderately. So he has given you. All together. So he has given you former rain moderately. Then he says, he will cause to come down for you rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month. So which first month is that? Is he talking about Passover? So this man is saying, the Lord has given you the former rain moderately. So be happy for that. But be so much happy, for because the Lord will give you
the former rain
enkuba esooka
and the latter rain
era n'enkuba esembayo
in which month?
mu mwezi ki?
In the first
Mwezi
month.
ogusooka.
So I want you to come here and see.
Njagala nzije wano mulabe.
So when we come to Egypt,
Tujja e Misiri,
we said we must have the former what?
twagambye tulina okubeera n'eki?
And then you must have what?
N'enkuba.
The latter rain.
N'enkuba esembayo.
Can we all see that?
So kiraba ekyo.
And after overcoming Egypt,
Oluvannyuma lw'okuwangula Misiri,
when we come to the former rain, when we come to the first month,
tujja mu mwezi ogusooka,
what should we receive?
ki tulina okuba nga tufuna?
We are going to receive the former
Tulina
rain.
okuba nga tufuna enkuba esooka.
So what Joel is doing
Yoeri kyali mu kukola,
is standing here and he's saying,
ali mu kuyimirira wano ng'ali mu bagamba nti
we have received already the former rain.
tufunye enkuba esooka.
But which former rain is that?
Naye enkuba ki eyo?
He's calling it moderately.
Nti eyo nkuba esooka mu kigera.
So when we are in the natural,
Tubeera mu ky'omubiri,
what does the Lord give us?
Mukama atuwa ki?
He gives us moderately.
Atuwa mu kigera.
Altogether,
Tuli ffenna
it is half.
kitundu,
And when we receive the full,
era ekitudde tukifuna
when we come to that which is spiritual,
tunajjamu ekyo eky'omwoyo.
okay, we shall pick her later. So we have moderate,
Kakati tulina mu kigera,
former rain,
enkuba esooka mu kigera,
and here we are also going to get moderate.
era tugenda kubeera n'enkuba esembayo mu kigera.
Then when we come to the spiritual,
Tunajjera mu ky'omwoyo,
remember with the spiritual,
mujjukire nti n'ekyomwoyo
we are told this one is glorious.
bagamba kino kya kitiibwa,
It is powerful.
ky'amaanyi,
So it comes in full.
kijja mu bujjuvu.
So we are going, when you come to Babylon, it's going to be full,
Wano bwe tujja mu Babuloni kigenda kubeera kijjudde,
and here it's going to be full.
nano kigenda kubeera kijjudde.
Are we all together?
Tuli ffenna wamu.
So Joel is saying,
So Yoeri agamba nti
we have received the former rain moderately.
tufunye enkuba esooka mu kigera,
But they were to receive what?
naye bali bakufuna ki?
They were to receive the latter,
Bali bakufuna enkuba esembayo,
come again, receive the former,
bajje neera bafune esooka,
and then receive the latter.
badde bafune esembayo.
But what is he doing?
N'eki kyakola
Is combining the two.
okugatta byombi.
So he's saying you have received the former rain
Agamba nti enkuba
moderately,
esooka mu kigera,
and the Lord
era Mukama
will cause you
ajja kubaleetera
to
mmwe
come down
okujja gye muli
the latter rain
enkuba esembayo
and the former rain
era n'enkuba esooka
in what?
mu ki?
In the first month.
Mu mwezi ogusooka.
So he's getting these 2 points
Ali mu kuleeta ebintu bino bibiri
and he's placing them together.
n'abiteeka wamu.
So what is he doing?
Kikyali mu kukola.
Brothers and sisters, what is he doing?
Kikyali mu kukola.
Yeah, he's combining these 2 lines,
Ali mu kugatta layinzi n'ebbiri,
but specifically, how does he combine
naye
them?
mu ngeri enjawulo azigatta atya?
So he's combining the Day of
Ali
Atonement
mu gatta olunaku olw'okutangirira
for the natural
olw'omubiri
with what?
n'eki?
With the Passover
Okuyitako
for the spiritual.
ey'omwoyo.
Can you all see that?
Naye tukiraba ekyo.
So implying,
Kitegeeza nti
now we are going to have
kakati tugenda kubeera ne
Passover natural,
n'okuyitako okw'omubiri,
Pentecost.
Pentekooti,
Actually, let me now write. So after Pentecost, what's the next thing?
oluvannyuma lwa Pentekooti ki ekiba kiddako?
Let me first align them well.
Okembetereze bulungi.
So it's going to be first Passover.
Tugenda kubeera nga tusooka kuba na kuyitako.
This is 14th day of the first month.
Mwezi ogusooka olunaku olw'14.
Then we are going to have Pentecost.
Tugenda kubeera n'oku Pentekooti,
And this is what?
nga kino ki?
6th day of the third month.
Mwezi ogwokusatu olunaku olw'omukaaga.
Then we are going to have
Tugenda kubeera ne
trumpets
amakondeere
on the first day
olunaku olusooka
of the 7th month.
olw'omwezi ogw'omusanvu.
Then what are we going to have?
Kye tugenda okubeera nakyo
10th day
olunaku olw'ekkumi
of the 7th month. But we have seen what is Joel doing. Is combining the former rain and the latter what? So as we are having the 10th day of the 7th month, we are also at what? We are also at Passover on the first day of the first month. So it's combining the two atonements. So we have the of atonement natural, and is combining it with Passover spiritual. Are we all together? So after that, what are we going to have here? So we are going to have Pentecost, but then this one is spiritual. Then after that, the blowing of trumpets, and then we are going to have the 10th day of the 7th month as now our line. Are we together? It's the same thing we are having here. It is what we have been trying to develop. So we are going to have what we are going to say. When does the first angel arrive in history? The first angel is connected with which feast? It's connected with Passover. So we're going to start. We are going to have the first angel here. All together. When we come here, we have spiritual what? What are we going to have here? We are also going to have the first angel. But I'm going to call this one first angel A. Small a. Because it's former rain what? Moderately. So I'm going to call this one capital what? Capital A. Are we all together? But remember we said we have Passover and we have Pentecost. And we saw that what takes place at Passover, it repeats itself when? It repeats itself at Pentecost. So people are supposed to have their atonement here. But when they come here, what happens? They are scattered. They are just gathered. And what they were supposed to get here at the cross, they get it where? At the Pentecost. So Passover and Pentecost, these are 2 points that we cannot separate. And when we shall get time, we shall see that Pentecost is just the empowerment of the first angel's message. It's just the first angel going in power. Actually, we can see it clearly on the line of Moses. This is where God stands, and then he promises in power. Can we see God promising at Sinai? And what was Sinai? It was Pentecost. But we know the promise. It is supposed to be given where? It's supposed to be given at Passover. So we all know that after the first angel, we are supposed to have the second angel. So we are going to see in our history as the first angel is going into power, is also going to be followed immediately by the second angel. And we shall see that it is the work of this second angel that comes and blows a trumpet here. So implying when you come here on the 10th of the 7th month, this is the day of atonement. So which angel is here? So we have the small third angel.
ennyukuta A entono.
Can you all see that?
So kiraba ekyo ffenna.
Then when we come here,
Tunajja wano
we are going to have the first angel
agenda kubeera ne malayika asooka
going in power.
agenda mu maanyi.
And it's going to be followed by what?
Agenda kuba ng'agobererwa ki?
By the second angel,
Owookubiri
who's going to be empowered here at the blowing of trumpet.
agenda okuba nga addizibwamu amaanyi wano okufuuka kw'amakondeere.
And when we come to the third angel,
Tugenda ku malayika owookusatu.
when we come to the Day of Atonement,
Olunaku olw'okutangirira
which angel are we having here?
malayika ki bwe tulina wano?
We are having the third angel,
Malayika owookusatu.
but in capital what?
Naye ennyukuta ennene.
So are we all together?
Tuli ffenna
Sister Teddy, we've left you behind.
ndaba madamu Teddy tukuyisa.
But by God's grace,
naye kuyita mu kisa kya Mukama
we shall come back for you.
tujja kukomawo.
So it's going to be the same case
Kigenda kubeera nga kye kimu
with the parable of the 10 virgins.
ne olugero lw'abawala ekkumi.
We shall have the parable of the 10 virgins from here,
Tujja kuba n'olugero lw'abawala ekkumi okuva awo.
and it will bring us here to
Tujja
Passover,
tuleeta wano kuyitako
because there is atonement.
kubanga waliwo kutangirira.
But when we come to Passover,
Naye tunajja kuyitako
we are going to begin another journey
tugenda kutandika olugendo olulala
of now going to the second temple cleansing.
olw'okugenda mu maaso kati kulongosa kwa yeekaalu omulundi ogwo.
So are we all okay with that?
Tuli ffenna n'ekyo.
Yes? Okay.
Kale
So first of all, what you have to fix in your mind,
kye tulina okusooka tuyigiza mu birowoozo byaffe
that we have two powers we have to overcome.
nti tulina amaanyi abiri ge tulina okuwangula.
But these two powers,
Naye amaanyi gano abiri
we have only one way of overcoming them,
tulina engeri emu yokka yogawangula.
and that way is in the sanctuary.
Ekkubo eryo lirimu liri mu yeekaalu.
So we have that which is natural,
Tulina ekyo ekisooka eky'omubiri,
and we have that which is spiritual.
tulina ekyo eky'omwoyo.
But that which is natural,
Ekyo ekisooka eky'omubiri
it's going to teach us
kigenda tusomesa
of how we are going to go through that which is spiritual.
gye tugenda okuba nga tuyitamu ekyo eky'omwoyo.
By the way, it can even be seen
Kisobola n'okuba nga kirabibwa
when we come to Adam.
tujja eri Adamu.
So when you come to the big line,
Bwe tugenda ku layini ennene,
I want you to see here carefully.
njagala mulabe wano omwetegereze
So
bulungi.
where is the cross?
Omusalaba guli wa?
It is here on Passover, spiritual
Omusalaba guli
Passover.
waneno ku Passover.
Can you all see that?
Etusobola kiraba ffenna
And this one is the Day of Atonement.
wano olunaku olw'okutangirira.
But I want you to stand
Naye
here
njagala muyimirire wano
and look backwards.
tunule emabega.
Have these people been celebrating Passover?
Abantu bano badde bajaganya Passover.
Have they been celebrating Pentecost?
Badde bajaguza Pentecost.
Have they been celebrating the blowing of trumpets?
Badde bajaguza okufuuka makondeere.
How have these people been celebrating them?
Badde babikuza batya
Naturally.
mu mubiri.
Can we see that?
So kiraba ekyo.
So they have been celebrating.
Babadde
They have been going through these feasts,
babadde bayita mu mbaga zino
but naturally.
naye mu by'omubiri.
All together.
Tuli ffenna.
But when Christ comes here,
Naye Kristo wajja wano
what is happening?
kikyakola.
Are they not repeating the same thing?
Si tebali mukudamu kintu
But
kye.
now in a spiritual what?
Naye kaakati mu
In
kyono
a spiritual way.
mu ngeri ey'omwoyo.
So they are having spiritual Passover.
Kati balina Passover
They
ey'omubiri.
have now spiritual Pentecost,
Balina okuyitako okw'omwoyo, balina Pentecost ey'omwoyo.
spiritual blowing of trumpets,
Balina okufuuka amakondeere okw'omwoyo.
and then they are supposed to have a spiritual Day of
Era
Atonement.
balina olunaku lw'okutangirira olw'omwoyo.
Are we all together?
Tuli wamu.
So, brothers and sisters,
Abooluganda,
Passover,
kuyitako
this is the beginning.
kwe kutandika.
Actually, now it's like the beginning of another of the same journey,
Kwe kutandika
but in a spiritual sense.
naye mu ngeri ey'omwoyo.
Yeah, if you read spiritual prophecy,
Bw'osoma omwoyo w'obunnabbi
GC
mu kitabo ekyo eky'olutalo lunene
611,
611
what does this talk about to the work of the disciples?
ayogera ki ku mulimu gw'abatume?
It was the work
Gwe mulimu
of beginning of the gospel.
ogw'okutandika okw'enjiri.
All together. He says the gospel begins at the cross.
Agamba nti enjiri etandikira ku
So
musalaba.
can we start behind there was no gospel?
So tusobola okugamba nti mabega tewaliwo njiri.
So the gospel is there,
Enjiri yaliwo.
but it was in a natural sense.
naye yali mu ky'omubiri
And people were saved.
abantu balokolebwa
But when we come to the cross,
tujja ku musalaba
but now we are beginning the gospel,
kakati mu kutandika enjiri
but now in a spiritual sense.
kakati mu ngeri ey'omwoyo
So that which is on the big line
ekyo ekiri ku layini ennene
is going to be the same case
ekintu kye kimu
when we come to our line.
tujja ku layini yaffe
However,
naye
for us, we are not going to go and look for the physical lambs
tetugenda kujja tunoonye endiga ez'omubiri
altogether.
tuli ffenna
But what God is going to do
naye mukama kyagenda okukola
is to bring us His promises,
okutuleetera ebisuubizo bye
but in a moderate sense,
mu kigera
to the extent
kutuusa ku ssa nti
that we cannot see into its fullness.
tusobola okulaba kibi mu bujjuvu bwakyo
What we can only see
tusobola okulaba kyokka
is that which is natural
kyekyo eky'omubiri kyokka
altogether.
tuli ffenna
If it is theft,
buba nga bubbi
we shall also only see that's physical, that outside safety
tugenda kulaba bubbi bwokka obwo obwewa bweru
altogether.
tuli ffenna
But time is going to come
naye ekiseera kigenda kujja
when we are going to meet this spiritual cross.
tugenda okusisinkana omwoyo omusalaba
We are going to
gw'omwoyo
the truth of the cross.
amazima ag'omusalaba
It's going to come in its fullness.
gagenda kujja mu bujjuvu bwagwo
In that
mu ngeri nti
now we see fornication
kati tulabe
or adultery
obwenzi
not as having physical contact with someone,
nga si kubeera nti olina gw'oli naye
but now seeing it from the mind
naye nga kati tukirabire mu ndowooza yaffe
that if you're not careful,
tukirabe nti bwewa teweegendereza
even within a microsecond you can commit adultery
ne mu tundukundu kakatikitiki osobola okuba nga weteeka mu mbeera eno
all together.
tuli ffenna wamu
So we are going to see,
tugenda kukiraba nti
if we can go back in the language of Christ,
tunaddayo mu lulimi lwa kristo
here we are baptized. This natural Pentecost, we are baptized with what?
tubatizibwa naki
We are baptized with water.
tubatizibwa n'amazzi
What about when you come here?
tujja wano tubatizibwa naki
We are going to be baptized with the Holy Spirit.
tubatizibwa n'omwoyo
I think that we are just repeating the same.
tulaba nti ebintu biddamu bye bimu
So this baptism,
okubatizibwa kuno
it gives you power
tuwa amaanyi
to overcome this natural power misery altogether.
tuli wamu
And by the time you come here,
tunajja wano
what are you having?
kye tulina
You've come to the day of atonement.
tulina olunaku olw'okutangirira
You've come to the history of the third angel.
se wansi wa malayika owokusatu
And what does the third angel do?
malayika owokusatu akola ki
It cleanses,
alongoosa
but we've seen that the third angel
ne tukye nti malayika owokusatu
is connected with what?
kwatagana naki
With the latter rain. What does the latter rain do?
enkuba esembayo ekola ki
It ripens or it completes it. So we need to ask ourselves the question,
akkiriza tulina okwebuza
it is
ekibuuzo
completing what?
amaliriza ki
It's completing the work
amaliriza
of you overcoming this spiritual captivity,
obuwambe
the physical captivity.
okuwangula obuwambe obw'omubiri
You're overcoming
olimu kuwangula
the outside man.
omusajja ow'ebweru
But what's going to happen
ekyo ekigenda
if you overcome him outside?
omuwangula ebweru
Now it's going to be manifested inside.
kati agenda kubanga alabisibwamu
So here,
wano
what are we supposed to do? What is supposed to happen in our lives?
kyekirina okuba nga kituukirira mu bulamu bwaffe
At this point, we must ripen.
tulina okuba nga twengera
But
naye
we saw what we are supposed to get here.
kye tulina okuba nga tufuna wano
We don't receive it
tukifuna
because of our ignorance.
olw'obutamanya bwaffe
When do we receive it?
tukifuna ddi
We receive it when? We receive it at Pentecost.
pentekooti
So by the time we come to Pentecost,
tutuukira wano ku pentekooti
we must have people ripened.
tulina okubeera nga tulinawo abantu abengedde
And that is why,
ensonga lwaki
in one sense,
mu ngeri emu
Pentecost is called what?
pentekooti eyitibwa ki
The Feast of Harvest.
embaga ey'amakungula
There are people
waliwo abantu
who are harvested here.
wano nga bakungulwa
And what they brought here
era wano kye baleese
are the 2 pieces of bread,
gy'emigaati ebiri
but made with what?
naye nga kikolebwa naki
Made with sin
nga kikolebwa n'ekibi
altogether.
ffenna
So sin is still in these 2 pieces of bread.
nti wano ekibi kikyali mu migaati gino ebiri
So sin is still in these people.
ekibi kikyali mu bantu bano eno
However much they have overcome Egypt,
Misiri, they still have Babylon in them. And they still have a battle to overcome this Babylon. So when you come here at Pentecost, as God is waving them, what is God promising them? To upload Babylon in them. That is why God stands at Sinai and says, "Thou shalt not steal." Altogether, if he had already accomplished the work, why was he promising them? But it's like as if nothing is done in them. It is until Babylon is uprooted, that is when God considers you to have had life altogether. So here's like as if you're just beginning the journey. Actually, you're going to see here, you're just sowing. God is giving you His word afresh, and He's giving it to you in a full measure. So He's expecting you to germinate in a full what? In a full measure, so that you come here on the door of atonement and He gives you what? Former rain, latter rain, in a full measure, that you may ripen to the full measure. Altogether. So you have to first receive that which is natural, and then later we shall receive that which is spiritual. Brothers and sisters, Pentecost we are talking about, we must receive that which is natural. We must receive that which is natural in our lives. When someone steps on you, we cannot see you again changing the face. Someone has stepped on me. Altogether, there is something we must receive. Even in the natural things of the day to day, here we must receive knowledge, where we must have schools established, sanitariums established, very powerful, to the extent that the world looks at us and say that really those people have a God. But today, if the world looks at us, there is nothing that it can admire from us. But by the time we come to Pentecost, God is giving us that which is natural, which now that is preparing us and giving us force in order to come and receive that which is spiritual. So I pray that we all think about this principle, and we see that they are like two lines, but they are combined into one line. And what brings about that is because of the two powers that we are fighting over, or because the principle of the natural and spiritual. God first gives you that which is natural, and then He gives you later that which is spiritual. So in case the principles are not coming out well, if it's not yet out very well, I believe Brother Trevor is going to emphasize the same thing, and we shall fully understand it. So I want us to end by knowing this, that we are going to have a journey. We are going to move from 1989. But we are going to be coming from where? We are going to be coming from Egypt. So which journey will clearly illustrate our journey in the past? Which history that we shall look at and fully understand how we are going to come out of Egypt. Thank you so much. The journey of the children of Israel from Egypt to Canaan. Actually, remember,
one thing we are going to see, this was a journey from Egypt to Canaan. But on that same journey, they also had these two powers. They had to escape from Egypt, and we can see them that by Passover they have escaped. Then Red Sea, what is happening? Pharaoh is completely destroyed. What does that mean? They can never again go back into the captivity of Pharaoh altogether. So that journey from Egypt through the plagues come to Passover and Red Sea, it's going to tell us how we are going to come out of Egypt. So the other part, the 40 years in the wilderness, for it is teaching us how we are going to come out of Babylon altogether. So that past history is going to teach us fully how we are going to come out of Egypt. Now which line is going to teach us the coming out of Babylon? Yes? Christ and his disciples somehow, but there is another line. The Mealites. Remember the Mealites, they also began their journey in 1798. And you have to first deal with that which is natural, and then we deal with that which is spiritual. The line of Sister White. Okay, it can teach us, but I wanted you to begin with that which is natural. The line of the children of Israel when they were coming out of what? Out of Babylon. We are talking about this, the second stage. Do you remember the 3 decrees? They brought them out of what? Out of Babylon. So we are going to combine them together, and we are going to fully understand how we are going to come out of Egypt and out of Babylon. So I thought I would touch some of the important points, but the natural spiritual principles has taken a lot of time. So I beg that we stop here, and we shall pick up from there in another presentation. Okay, let us pray.